EdiCue is the premier tool for creating ADR cues with Pro Tools. It can load PDF shooting scripts to simplify the creation of cues and allows for the text of the lines to be styled. Once cueing is complete, EdiCue can export a variety of files, including PDFs using customizable layouts. You can design the complete look and formatting of the text, select what fields appear in each cue, and set up how cue numbers should count and what data they contain. To assist with updating cues from a writer, EdiCue can now generate the to-be-written PDFs with editable fields. This allows writers to enter the updated lines directly into the PDF, and this PDF can then be loaded back into EdiCue to update the master cues session. Want to know more about how EdiCue works? Then keep watching this video for a demonstration on how to set up EdiCue and export the various files that it can create. Hi, I'm Mark from Sounds in Sync, the developer of EdiCue. In this video, I'm going to show you how to configure the various settings on these tabs. That is, apart from designing the PDF bands that are selected here in the PDF layout list. To see how to configure the band designs, see the next demo video. Now, if you haven't seen them already, check out the previous videos that demonstrate how to create a Pro Tools cue session and how to load the cue data into EdiCue from all the various file types that it can load. So the first thing I want to show you in this video is explain where all these settings are stored. Now, all these settings on these tabs here, including the band designs, which can be created by clicking these buttons, they're all stored in a single settings file. That is a single file for every production that you create in EdiCue. Now, these productions can be managed from this productions menu here, but the main thing I wanted to show you here was this set location of settings file option. This window here allows you to set up where to save the settings file. Now, by default it saves to the application support folder, but if you're using EdiCue on various systems, say in a facility, or if you want to use EdiCue on a machine in a studio and be able to continue queuing on a laptop, say at home, you may wish to store this settings file either on the shared network drive in a facility or on an external drive that you can take with you wherever you go. So to do that, just click this option here and set the location of where you want to save the file. The other thing I just wanted to highlight here is by default, EdiCue will also create a backup of the last 10 saves, and that can be useful if for some reason you've deleted a design or a setup. You can go back to these backups and load the relevant information you want out of them. Please see the user guide for more information about that. So I'll just go back to our accidents happen text file and load that data. So I'm just going to go through the tabs here on the main window and explain what all these various settings do. And in the first section here, we've got the production ID, and this can be used as part of the exported file names we'll get onto just over here. The next field here is new in EdiCue version 3, is a document version field. Now this can also be called up as part of the exported file names, and it is also displayed in the headers of the exported PDF files. And you just use this field to set a revision if you have multiple exports, say while cues are being culled, etc. You can set this field to a number or a date, just so that people know what version of the document you're working with. The next section here is the segment details. And a segment is a term that we've created to define either a reel, episode, act, part, or spool. And if you do not have a segment, or if the production is a single entity, you do not have to have a segment at all, and this list is disabled. But say you've got, as in the case of this accidents happen sample data, we've got 5 reels. You would select reel here, and you can either click the plus button here to create additional segments or reels, or you can click the split hours button, and EdiCue will create a segment at the start of each hour for the duration of the production, and then you can update the segment numbers and picture versions of each segment. Now, the reason these segments have a duration here of 2 minutes is that if you were going to export this cue data as an AEF, EdiCue needs to create a WAV file that's longer than the longest clip. So the end time isn't used in terms of assigning these segment numbers to cues. It's only used to set the duration of the clip in the exported AF. So we've just set it for 2 minutes so that it's kind of big enough to see it when you're zoomed out in the session, but it's not that long that you're going to create a really long WAV file. Now, as you can see, we've got the cue segment numbers and cue picture version numbers, and we've also got a all segment number and all picture version number. Now, the reason we've got these two sets of numbers is if you use the segment number in the context of a single segment, be it a single reel or episode, then the cue segment number is used. For instance, if you're using the segment number in the exported file name and you've got individual PDFs for each reel, then the cue segment number is used. If the exported PDF contains all reels for the film, then the all segment number is used. The next section we've got here is the character list. This displays all the characters that are present in the loaded data. And the first thing you do on this list here is you can click which characters you want to export. You can option click one of these checkboxes, and then you can check and uncheck all characters in the one hit. Now, because all this data was set in the Pro Tools session that this came from, we don't need to make any changes here, but obviously if it wasn't, or you want to make any changes, you can do that here. The next thing you set here is the record time, or the number of minutes per cue for a regular cue or a BVOX cue. The BVOX cues are new in EdiCue version 3, and these are cues that are assigned to be breaths and vocal cues and can be assigned a shorter record time. So you can enter these values directly into the list here, or you can select a range of, so we'll select these 3 characters here. You can assign a different record time here. And the number of cues, number of BVOX cues, and number of to be written cues are just showing you the totals that are present in the loaded data. And the last thing we can set up here is a actor setup time. And this is just added to the total time that's required here and also in the exported summary files. And this is just an extra time to allow you to set up for each record session with each actor. Oh, and one more thing, if you didn't see it in the previous video where we described this, setting up the cue session in Pro Tools, you can have these values default by setting special tags in the track names in less than and greater than characters, so that each time you load this data from a Pro Tools session, these will automatically default to whatever you want. Now we'll move to the General Settings tab. Here we've got a set of header fields that obviously just show this data in the headers of each PDF that contain these fields. Over here we have export filters, and you can use these fields here to filter the cues that are exported that have a particular priority cue status or reason. Use the exported range here to enter start and end timecode values here if you want to export just a particular range of the production or cue data that's loaded. And over here we have setups for the ADR summary. So this is used for the ADR summary that's exported as a PDF and also as a text or Excel file. So here you set up the type of summary. Now this can be a standard type. I might actually just export this for you. I'll just export all characters, and over here, yes, I've still got just the summary exporting as a PDF. Just click Apple E and exported this summary file here. So this is what a standard summary looks like. It's just got the single character lines here. And if I select reason category, this list here becomes enabled. I'll just export that so you can see what this looks like. So now here below each character and below the totals here, we get a breakdown of the number of cues that are required for technical reason and for production requests. So we'll just close them. And to use these reason categories, we just need to set up this list so you can create whatever categories you like and just assign the reasons between commas here that are members of each category. Now the last section here is this token field and additional controls here that we use to set up the exported file names and folders that EdiCue generates. So this is a special token field that I've created. The grey tokens here cannot be deleted, but everything else can be removed. So we can just click this clear button, load the default, or revert to what was there previously. So I'll just clear this and just show you, you can just drag and drop these tokens into this field, put them in whatever order you want. You can also add to this any alphanumeric characters here, underscore and a dash. So this gives you plenty of scope to configure how the file names and folders are named with EdiCue. In addition to this token field, for character files, you can also configure if the character ID, name or actor name is used to name those files. And also, instead of the default PDF ID being used in the exported file name, you can use the PDF title. So I'll just set this back up for default, and we'll move to the queue number settings tab. The first section here is used when the EdiCue data is imported from a data file, and if the queue numbers are all present and unique, then this option here is enabled by default. So you've still got the option, if your queue data does contain valid queue numbers, you can still regenerate them by selecting this option. The next section here is used in conjunction with the custom queue numbers. So this is only used if you've loaded a Pro Tools session file that contains custom queue numbers. Now, if every clip contains a custom queue number, then this option here is enabled where you can use just the custom queue numbers. You also have the option of just setting a custom queue number for a selection of clips, and then this option here is used where you can use the custom queue number for those clips and revert to the internal counter for every other clip, and then the queue counter will not use the queue numbers or custom queue numbers that have come from those clips. The next section here just sets the length or the number of leading zeros that the internal counter generates. And then this section here allows you to set up the counting method. So you can either generate a global queue counter, so you can have a unique counter for every queue that's being exported. The default is this one here, where we reset the counter to 1 for every new character. This one here allows you to set up a new counter for every segment. So if you've got reels loaded, as in this case, then each time a new character is found in a new segment, the counter will start again from 1. This is a variation on that, where the counter starts at 101, 201, 301, etc. for reel 1, reel 2, reel 3. And the last one here is a new one for EdiCue version 3, where we can actually start the counter from 1 for every character and scene. Now you might have noticed down here that the tokens have been changing while we're changing the counter method. If I just go back to global, clear the token field, you can see as I move through these methods, additional grey tokens appear in this token field. And that's because, say for instance, if we're going to reset the counter for every character and scene, then we obviously need the scene number to be part of the queue number. Otherwise, we wouldn't be generating unique queue numbers. So like the token field that's used to generate the file names, this token field here configures what elements are placed in the actual queue number. So you can see the example down below. Now we've got the option here to use the all segment number, all picture version, or the queue segment number and queue picture version. Obviously, if you don't have any segments, it'll just use the all segment number here for either token. We can use the buttons here to set up the default. And like the other token field, we can also add additional characters and letters, however you want to configure this. Oh, and one more thing I forgot to mention here is with these queue counting methods for a global and character queue counter, if you want to set the number that the counter starts from, you can do that by checking this option here. And when you go to export, EdiCue will display a window to allow you to set the value that each counter starts from. Moving on to the Export Settings tab here. This is where we configure what PDFs are exported. We've got PDF options down here. We've got our margins, and also we configure what files are exported. So first we'll have a look at the PDF layouts list here. This layout list here contains all of the preset layouts. They're all shown here in blue. If I duplicate one of these, the duplicate then has got a black text, And this can be customized in that you can select the bands here that make up the layout of the exported PDFs. So the presets can't be deleted, but you can modify everything apart from what bands are assigned to that layout. So the first thing you do is you check what PDFs you wish to export. You can change the title, the PDF ID. For all of these layouts, you can select a portrait or landscape orientation. You select here if you wish to create a time order or custom order. If you select custom here, then in the PDF options, this menu here then is used to configure the sort order of the exported cues. This filter option here at this stage is only used to configure if you want to create a PDF that contains just the to be written cues, which is used for this layout here. And then you assign the header, scene, and cue or summary band designs here. Now, as I said earlier, we'll get into configuring these band designs in the next video. Now, if, for example, you want to create a time order version of this actor summary, you'd probably want to duplicate that because you'll also want to change the header. So we can just call this actor time. Say we'll just create a landscape version of this. Select time order here. Now this at the moment has got the character header, which contains the character name and actor name. So we actually would want to select one of the other headers, say this one here. We can select not to contain a scene band, or we can select, say this one here, which has also got the segment numbers at the left-hand side of the band. And here we'll just leave the actor cue design selected. So now I'll just export just this new actor time order PDF. And now we can see we've got our actors PDF in landscape in time order. So we've got these narration cues first. Now the thing that we're missing here is the character name because it's a time order list. So we'd actually need to generate a different cue band design if you wanted to generate this actor list. So we've actually got a engineer time order cue band design that contains the character name. And so I'll call this engineers list, which is actually fairly much the same as this engineer time one here, but just for the purposes of this demonstration, I'll just export that. Save, and now you can see we've got this cue band design used that contains the character names in each cue. So we'll get more into the setup of these band designs in the next video. So down in this section here, we select, as I've shown, the sort order when this menu option here is set to custom. The next menu here overrides the font that is used in the band designs. The main reason for adding this is if you're exporting non-English text or say an Asian text or Russian that requires a special font to be able to display those characters, rather than having to go into every band design that's used in the layouts that you're exporting and having to change the font. You can just select a different font here and say if you want a Unicode font, you can just use this one here. The next thing you can set up is just the page size. This just selects the font used in the footer because that isn't actually part of the band designs, and the color of the text. The next menu here allows you to configure how the cues are distributed in a PDF. Now, if your data contains several segments, you can export PDFs where all of those cues are contained within a single PDF in a continuous run. Or when EdiCue sees cues for a new segment, it can split the export to a new page, or if you want, you can create separate PDFs for each segment. This field here configures which layout we generate a blank PDF. This is just a PDF that can be used to add new cues during the record session. And if you check this option, EdiCue will create a subfolder for every character and place the PDFs for those characters in that subfolder. Here we just set the margins for the PDFs. And in this last section here, we select what additional files we wish to export. So I'll just check all of these and we'll just have a quick run through. This option here allows you to export all the cues and cue data in a text file or Excel file. This one here allows you to export the ADR summary data in a tab file or Excel file. And this one here allows you to export these various files for each character for loading into various streamer devices, or say these Excel files here. This option here allows you to create a AEF of all the cue data. So this can be used, say, if you're importing data from an Excel file and you want to create a cue session, so you can reconform those cues or add new cues or nudge them around to fine-tune the timing of them. You can export an AEF and create a Pro Tools session. This option here allows you to create a MIDI file for each character, just like EdiCue version 2 used to. And then this last option here allows you to create subtitle or subrit files, and this is how you configure them here. The last thing we set up here is the text encoding of the exported files. Now check out the user guide in relation to this, because some of these character files have their own built-in text encoding set because they are either only used on a Mac or a PC, but any other file, the text encoding is set using this option here. So now I'm just going to do an export run. I'll disable that option here, say check actor, director and engineer, and also a to be written and a summary layout. We'll leave all these exported options here so we can see what windows we get prompted with during the export. I'll delete the folder that we generated before and we'll export all characters. So now we can just click this Export Cues button or press Apple E. Here we are prompted to set the start timecode of the actual record session that MIDI files will go into. Here we set up our settings for our subrit files. And here we set up the settings for the AEF that we're going to generate. Note that if the imported cue data didn't have a duration, then we can set up the duration of the clips here. We'll just click OK. And now EdiCue is exporting all the PDFs and additional files that we selected into folders on the desktop. Here it now summarizes how many cues it's exported and in what files. And finally here you can select if you want to save the current settings back to the production settings file for this production. So here are the folders that EdiCue has created containing the various files it exported. It's created them here next to the source file that we loaded. If you want to define the location where these folders are created, then just click this preference here, and when you go to export, EdiCue will prompt you to set the location of where the files are exported to. So this completes the video on how to configure EdiCue and export the various files it can generate. If you need further clarification on anything shown here, please check out the EdiCue user guide, which can be saved from the help menu. See the next video for a demonstration on how to design the PDF bands that are selected in the PDF layouts list. Thanks for watching this video. Now if you'd like to try out EdiCue for yourself, either on Mac OS or Windows, just head to the download page of the website. Once the app is installed, just click Try to activate a trial license.